It wasn't an NDE. It was an actual death. I died. Jesus gave me a new life. In the book itself, we put copies of medical records because we want people to understand, just as the doctors did, that this wasn't anything that they did. There's no way in the world that I could be here talking to you, sitting here, standing, walking, doing anything that I do today, except for one and only one reason. God performed a miracle and sent me back. And he told me in our final conversation that he would send me back as if I had never died. And he will do it in a fashion that nobody can question that this was an absolute miracle. Not the doctors, not anybody. So that when they realize that, they will know that what I'm telling them is from him.
Hello, Robert Marshall. Welcome to the show. I'm truly honored by you joining me and looking forward to our conversation. How are you feeling today?
I feel absolutely excellent. Actually, today I woke up this morning. I was telling my wife that it was a year ago that I died on the 19th of May. And at this time, I was still walking with Jesus. I was in heaven a year ago today, walking with Jesus and talking with him still, literally. So it's kind of an anniversary. It's a big anniversary for me. And it kind of made me realize the time that I spent with him. Because on the 19th of May is when I died. And then, of course, the 21st and the 22nd, I'm still talking to him. And it's like even yesterday, I told her made me realize that was a long time.
I got to tell you, a happy anniversary for sure. That's amazing. I didn't realize it was just right on the exact date, so that's pretty cool. Well, every week we bring you powerful stories about life and death, spiritual awakening, and what it takes to move beyond the illusion and discover your true self. And if that resonates, you'll love what's coming today. Every so often, a story comes along that shakes you to the core, not because of fear or drama, because of the awe and love it carries. Now, today I'm honored to welcome Robert Marshall, who died not once, not twice, but 3 times, and spent a total of 44 hours in heaven in the presence of Jesus. His experience is medically documented, spiritually transformative, and deeply personal. In this conversation, we talk about what heaven really feels like and what Jesus taught him face to face, and why Robert was sent back with a mission to share what he saw. If you've ever wondered what it's like to meet Jesus, to walk in heaven, and to come back with a divine purpose, don't miss a second of this one. So welcome, Robert. I can't believe you're here today. I'm looking so forward to this story. Before we jump into it, why don't you talk for just a minute? Because I know when we get into the story, it's a lot about Jesus and your experience and that you're bringing that to the world. Before that experience happened, what was your world of Jesus at that point? Were you spiritual or were you into religion? What was your world like then?
I wasn't the best Christian. Okay. I had accepted the Lord in 1984. But it wasn't, I didn't go to church a lot. I didn't, very, very seldom actually. And just kind of lived my life. I knew I loved God and everything else, but I didn't follow. I wasn't a good steward. Fortunately, my conversion was real. I did truly accept him. Had I not have, I wouldn't have been in heaven. I wouldn't have got to meet Jesus. So that was reassuring when I did get to meet him. But I just did everyday things. My life wasn't conducive. I felt I justified it wasn't conducive. I was in the military and worked for the government and so on. And it just wasn't something that going to church didn't seem to fit in. I didn't really understand at that point that it was love that I was missing. And the joy I should have had from having him, I didn't experience that joy until I truly understood what it was. So I was living a normal life. I retired in 2015. I was playing golf every day and just relaxing and just existing like everybody else. And then on the 19th of May, I died. I tell people I died at 75 and I had a good life and I did some bad, did some good things, but it was over. I died. I went to heaven.
Wow, that's the before story, and for a lot of people, we're all caught up in life, and you can kind of either be focused on various things or even distracted by a lot of things, and that just seems to keep you busy every single day without a lot of prioritization. So it sounds like now you're about to tell the story of how you entered into this and how everything changed.
I like what you said. I was just caught up into life. I was caught up in everyday things prior to my death. Fortunately, Jesus loves us, and when he loves us, he never lets us go. As he said, nobody will snatch us from his hand. So no matter how hard I tried to jump out of his hand, he just wouldn't allow it. His promise was true that if you believe that you will have everlasting and eternal life, that you will be with him in heaven. And nobody can ever take that from us once we accept him. Now, when we just got caught up in life, I didn't get to feel the true joy that we get from him. And that's what happens when we get caught up in life. Instead of understanding that everything we have, everything we do, everything we get is because of Jesus. I just didn't appreciate it. I didn't think about it. What I lost because of that was the joy that I get from realizing everything is a gift. Everything is a blessing. It's a blessing to wake up in the morning. It's a blessing to be able to walk down the road. It's a blessing to hear music, to talk to people, do podcasts with you, and to share him. That's a blessing. It was a blessing that I had a job, that I had an income, that I was able to retire. I was able to play golf. But what I didn't realize and didn't appreciate and didn't recognize was that none of that was because of me on my own. It was because of him. And even when I wasn't acknowledging him, he was still in my life, working, protecting me, making things that I could do and function and accomplish. It's all a blessing from him. The difference between then and now is I had somebody explain it to me really well, and that was Jesus. Hopefully, as he commanded me, I can explain that to others so that they can realize it too. Because the joy that you get when you realize that Jesus is not a God of fear. If you don't know him, if you haven't accepted him, yes, you better fear him. But when you do, it's total love. Jesus is love. Everybody says that, but they don't really believe it. It's not in their heart. And that's what they've got to understand. And when you do, your whole perspective of life and joy and happiness change. There's no reason to worry about anything. There's no reason to be upset about anything. Nothing. You're just in a continuous, joyous, happy state.
And one of the reasons a lot of folks watch these podcasts is because they're not quite sure, and they love hearing testimonies from others that have gone to the other side and talked to Jesus like yourself. And from that, they gain even more of a belief, more of a knowing. And so why don't we do that? Why don't we jump into where the story begins just before and leading up into your NDE and then your overall experience?
It actually started on the 17th of May. 2024. I woke up and I had a really large mass on my neck, and I was having problems breathing and swallowing, and I didn't understand what it just came up like overnight. And I told my wife, I'm gonna go down to a standalone emergency room and see what's going on here. And I went to a local stand-up emergency room in Willow Park, and when I walked in, they took me to the back room, and you know, they always sit you in this little room, and the nurses come and they take your blood pressure and they put me on oxygen and all that stuff. And then the doctor came in and he examined me, and there was normal protocols, and he told me, he said, you know, I'm going to order a CAT scan, and he said a blood test, and we're gonna start there and see what's going on, because I didn't have a temperature and stuff like that. And they did the CAT scan, the blood test, and everything else. And of course, I'm in the room waiting for the doctor to come now, and they're never enjoyable just sitting there. They didn't even have a TV in there for me to watch, so I'm just kind of looking at the wall, counting holes in the ceiling and everything. And the doctor came in. He walked in and he sat down on a little stool, and he looked at me from across the room. He wasn't next to the bed. I was on the little single bed there. And he said, well, I'm going to give it to you straight. And I said, okay. I kind of wondered there at first, you know, why is he standing off? You know, if I got something contagious or whatever. And he says, I I looked at your blood test and I got the results on those and the CAT scan. And I've discussed this with two other doctors outside here. And we all came to the same conclusion and diagnosis that we're about 99% sure that the mass in your neck is a new diagnosis of cancer. Of course, that hit me kind of hard. He says, I talked to the other doctors because I wanted to be sure. He says, but the blood test and the way that it's growth, it's very aggressive. He says, and I want you to, I already talked to the other doctor and he's going to make an appointment for you on Monday to go in to see him. He was a ENT surgeon and dealt with cancer. He says, I want you to go see him immediately. Don't put it off. He says, it's very aggressive. You need to go now. I said, okay. Well, he gave me some steroids and some antibiotics for whatever, they just got to give you something, I guess. And he says, now make sure you see that appointment on Monday. I came home and told my wife. The doctor said, it's about 99% sure it's cancer. And she immediately says, that's not something to joke about. And I said, I wouldn't joke about something like that. So she says, all righty, then I guess we're going to have to deal with this. And she handled pretty well. And she's been in the medical field for her entire career, 35, 40 years. And she said, well, we'll deal with it and we'll make sure we get there on Monday. I never made it to Monday. Friday, on the 17th of May, I was having a lot of trouble breathing and swallowing. I couldn't swallow anything. I had to gulp to swallow any water even. And we got in the car and she said, I'm taking you to the emergency room downtown to a major hospital. I said, well, drop me off in the emergency room. I'll go in, you go park the car. And she said, okay. So I went into the emergency room. I guess I must have looked kind of bad or something. The lady behind the counter kind of leaned over to the side and says, are you okay? I said, yeah, I'm having a little trouble breathing here. She goes, you go right back. And she pushed the button. He says, you go right back into the back room right now. She didn't even check me in at the desk, nothing. I mean, she just sent me right back into the back. The doctor came out immediately and he took me over to examine and started examining me. And by the time my wife got in there, he was already doing crazy, stuff and looking at my throat and trying to get me oxygen and everything else. And they took me into the back and they sedated me and gave me an oral intubation tube down my throat. And subsequently admitted me into the intensive care unit immediately. So I went to the ICU. Was in the ICU until the 19th of May. I'm thinking about this thing that the doctor told me was cancer and it was aggressive and I couldn't breathe. Well, when you can get oxygen, your whole opinion of life changes a whole lot. I didn't realize how much I was lacking getting oxygen at that point because I couldn't breathe hardly. And when they put that tube in and I was getting oxygen, I was a happy camper. Well, on the 19th of May, the doctor came in and said, with my wife, and they said, well, we're going to see all of his tests and everything look good. His oxygen count looks good and everything else. Of course, they're putting oxygen in me. It would. But he says, everything looks good. We're going to see how he does without the intubation tube and see if he can breathe on his own. And they've been giving me antibiotics and stuff all along. And I don't even know all the medicine they've given me, but I had to go to medical records to look at it. And she says, well, we're gonna take the tube out and see how he does. And my wife left the room because she didn't want to watch it. She didn't know what was going to happen, And the doctor and nurse were in there and they took the intubation tube out. And I could breathe. And they looked at the charts and they stayed in there for about 30, 35 minutes. And they said, everything looks good. He's doing fine. And my wife came back in the room and stuff. And of course, the doctor left because I'm breathing on my own okay. So she's happy. My wife's happy. I'm happy because I'm thinking, I'm going to get out of here. I didn't like being in that bed in there in the ICU. And My wife left the room for a little bit and went out to talk to the doctors, and they were gone for about 35 or 40 minutes is what the medical records said, that I was left alone in there. Sometime during that 35 to 40 minutes, that mass rolled over my airwaves and I suffocated to death. My heart stopped, no oxygen, wasn't breathing. My wife had walked in, came in the room, and she saw me blue. And she ran out to the doctor, says, he's blue, he's blue. And the doctor came running immediately. The nurses, they pushed the code blue button, not because of blue, I guess they do that. And they discovered that I had flatlined, that I had died. I was not breathing, I had no heart. And of course, when the code blue button went off, everybody in the world came in. And they chased my wife out of the ICU room, and they were trying to do CPR on me. They were trying to get the intubation tube back down in so I could get oxygen. They couldn't get that in because that mass was in the way. So they cut me to do a tracheotomy. Of course, this guy's still doing CPR, trying to get my heart going. And I'm bouncing around from him, and they're trying to cut me at the same time. A scalpel and bouncing around from somebody doing CPR is never a good combination, let me tell you. So they cut it a little crooked, they cut it a little large, and the intubation tube wasn't large enough to get in there. They got my heart going after 15 minutes. They had got that intubation tube in there. When they did, they had nicked something in there, and I was bleeding. And what happened was I bled out into my lungs. And now they had got my heart started, but very shortly thereafter, I flatlined again. This time, what happened is I drowned on my own blood. My lungs filled up with blood. Big problem. They're trying to get the blood out of there. They're trying to get the tube in there. They're trying to get me oxygen. My heart stopped again. It was another 20 minutes before they could get my heart started again with more CPR. Now, I was without oxygen. I mean, zero oxygen for that first 15 minutes. And zero oxygen for the next 20 minutes as well, because even though they were pumping oxygen in, it couldn't get to my bloodstream, because they have little things that measure your blood coming out of your finger. They know how much oxygen is getting in your bloodstream. I was getting zero. And the reason for that is your lungs, you have little thin membranes inside. And when you breathe air in, those little membranes pick up the oxygen and put it out into your bloodstream, and your heart pumps it out through all your organs in your brain, and then they take the oxygen that they need. Well, that couldn't happen because my lungs were coated with the blood and coagulating inside, and they couldn't get any oxygen into my bloodstream whatsoever. And as a result of that, I had flatlined again. They were doing the more CPR. It took them 20 minutes. This time they get my heart started again. But I still got no oxygen, but they've been scraping blood and everything out again, trying to get oxygen in there. And they got forceps going down in there, pulling blood. And it looked like as my wife said afterwards, she peeked in, and when they took me out of there, finally down into the surgery, but she said it looked like a butcher shop. It was horrible. And she realized there's a blood problem too. I mean, I bled out. They did get my heart started again at 20 minutes, but it was shortly after that again. It didn't last long. I flatlined again. This time it was 55 minutes. 55 more minutes, no oxygen. They couldn't get any in. They were pumping it, but it wasn't getting into me because they couldn't get all that stuff out of my heart. They ended up drilling a hole in my side. They took a liter bottle of fluid and blood out of my lungs. They drained it out. And they had to take me to surgery to scrape the inside of my lungs so they could try and get oxygen back in. So it was about another 55 minutes without oxygen until they could get that done to where I could start getting a little bit of oxygen. The average person uses you're supposed to have 98% oxygen concentration in your bloodstream. If they say if it goes below 90, you need to go to the emergency room right away. If it gets into the 80s, you're in trouble. Well, mine was at zero, and then they finally got it after 90 minutes. They got it up to where it was about 0.05. Not even 1%. And they continued scraping and everything else. And then they got it up over a period of time of continuous scraping and everything else to where they got it up to almost 40%. So they were happy about that. But Even at 40%, you're going to have brain damage. The problem is my brain was already destroyed anyway. But they did get that to that point, and then they had me on the machines where my heart was pumping, and they could show that oxygen was coming in, so they thought they could figure something out. But the machines were the only thing that kept my heart pumping and the blood flowing and the oxygen coming in. I didn't have a brain at that point. It was all machines. They did an MRI of my brain because at that point I had no stimulus to any reactions to anything, which they do a weird test when they're going to declare your brain dead. They have this little weird Brillo pad that they scrape on your eyes. They shoot ice water in your ears, just all kinds of things to make sure. And then they did an MRI on the 19th. The MRI showed no brain. They took it from, it's like looking at death. They took it from the top down, and my skull was totally deformed. There was no brain matter in there. All it was like a black hole with gel. The only thing solid they could see was the top of my spinal column. That's the only thing that showed up. The doctors knew at that point there was absolutely no hope. None. But they had me on the machines that were pumping. I was dead. I wasn't in there. They knew there was no hope, that I was brain dead. We have what's called a living will. And what it says is very simple. If they put you on any life support, any machines that are keeping your heart pumping and everything else, that we have 14 days to decide if they can take me off of that. Gives you an opportunity to make sure everything is done, know 100% sure, and that I guess you can deal with the fact that this person's dead. It's pretty hard to stop everything knowing that the person that's it, they're dead. Because we had that, the doctors could not end life support that night on the 19th, or they would have. Subsequently, since I came back, obviously, and I've gone back up to the hospital, and I've talked to all those doctors, and they said we were going to end it on the 19th because there was no hope. You were brain dead. There was nothing there. Brains do not recover. They don't regenerate. We can replace hearts. We can fix broken bones and kidneys and livers. No time, anywhere, any place has anybody ever restored or replaced or repaired a brain. It doesn't happen. When your brain is gone, you're gone. They tried to convince my wife of this from the 19th until the 23rd of May. Every day they would talk to her. She just wasn't having anything to do with it. She kept praying and praying and praying and not really knowing what to do. But the doctors really knew that it was futile. Basically, what I'm telling you is that I died. And the reason that I did that is so that you will understand what I'm about to tell you is not imaginary. When I died, I went to heaven. I went to heaven 3 times. The first time that I died, I went to heaven for 15 minutes. Now, when I died the first time, I kind of hovered above my body in the ICU room. And I looked down and I could see everything going. I could see them doing the CPR. I could see everybody down there. And later on, when I approached them and told them what they were doing, they were astounded because nobody knows what's happening. I was looking down and I kind of filtered out into the hallway and I saw my wife just crying in a puddle of tears. And I kind of went back. And then when I went back in, it was instantly, just that fast, I was in heaven again. I didn't go through a tunnel, a light. I was instantly in heaven. And I was standing there just amazed. The moment that I entered heaven, the peace and the love, the calmness, the feelings that overwhelmed and just permeated every part of me. The peace, the calm, the love that I felt was unbelievable. And I was standing there kind of just outside the inner courtyard, and I was looking at the trees, and they were just magnificent trees, and the flowers and the colors and the air. It was just beyond beauty. The oak trees in our backyard, we got 43 oak trees. And those oak trees are like a little 1-inch twig compared to the trees in heaven. And the flowers and the trees are just so vibrant in their colors. And the unique thing about them is this: every tree, every flower, every plant gives off what I called a melodic tone or hum. And it's all individualized towards each tree and flower or plant. And then they're all combined together to make this beautiful harmonic melody of praising Jesus all day long, just continuously. And it's kind of in the background. I mean, it's not overpowering. It's not like it would keep you from talking, but it's like a background white noise that it's there. And if you stop, you can listen and really enjoy it. But I know Jesus hears it all day. And in addition to that melodic hum, every flower, every tree, every plant has its own unique little smell. It's got its own scent. And like the tone that they give off, each one, they're all combined, and they make the most beautiful fragrance in the air that you would ever smell. It's not perfumey, it's not strong, it's just like fresh air. And it's kind of like what you smell is what you think the most perfect fresh air. Do you ever have like a smell of fresh cut grass or something? Or you walk into a beautiful floral and you go, oh, that's just so, that's what it's like. And it's just, there you go, oh, it's so beautiful. I looked over and I saw in the distance, in the inner courtyard, I saw a figure that I recognized. And I looked, and it was my dad. Now, my dad had died at 92 in 2011. And when he died of cancer. And as a result, it had eaten him away really. You know what cancer just destroys you. And he was just eaten up with it. And when I saw him, he looked to be about 35, 38 years old, in perfect health. He looked like I remembered him from my youth. So that was my dad, perfect health, happy. And he's over there like tending the hedges and stuff and the flowers in the inner courtyard. I call it the inner courtyard. It's kind of where Jesus is. Just huge, if you can imagine, just rows of shrubbery and flowers and interspersed between the trees, just towering over. And the river of life goes right down through it. And I saw my dad and I walked over to him. And I walked up to him and I said, Dad? And he goes, yes. And I says, am I in heaven? And he goes, yes. Yes, you are. Oh, well, when I grew up, my dad always used to, being in the military, I always get myself in weird situations and stuff. And I'd get injured or something. And I'd come home and he'd say, well, you did it now, didn't you, son? He said it in a loving way, not in a mean way or anything. It was just kind of a little way that we had to talk it. And he looked at me and he says, well, you did it now, didn't you? And I said, Dad, I didn't do anything. I died. He said, I know. But it was like his way of letting me know it really is him. And we talked a little bit and we, about different things and talked about the beauty and everything it was. And I noticed in the light in the distance or the silhouette. And I said, who's that? And he says, who do you think it is? And I said, Jesus? He said, yes. Being me, I said, well, how do I get to talk to him? I want to go meet Jesus. He says, you go over there and you approach him. And you start with your right knee on the ground, and then your left knee on the ground. And if there's a conversation to be had, he'll start it. I said, okay. I started to walk over there. And the instant I did, I was back in my body, in the ICU. Them cotton-picking doctors, they got my heart started at that time. I go, no, you took me out of heaven. I didn't say it to him. I was kind of out of it. But then all of a sudden, that peaceful, tranquil feeling I had was gone. I was down here now going through total chaos in the ICU. But it was just a short while later, I died again. This time I didn't hover. Instantly, I was back in heaven again. This time I was standing on the edge of a field, beautiful pasture and the trees and the same familiar hug, and like the trees hug you, and smells and everything, and you just feel loved. You feel connected to anybody and everything. It's the most unbelievable feeling you'll ever have. When you get to heaven, you'll know what I mean. But it's indescribable. You can't describe it. It's like you can't really describe heaven, the beauty of it. Uh, because it's not just the beauty of the trees and the flowers, it's the beauty of the love that's all around. We have a sun up here that gives us the light. There is none there. So you're not blinded by anything. And what it is, you always hear Jesus as the light. That's literal. That's true. It's his light that lights all of heaven. And with that light is his love that permeates with you. So you're constantly bathed in his love and light. That's what the light is from in heaven. It's not from a sun. So you never have to worry about driving into, looking in, or walking into the sun like you do here, and you can't see and you need sun. You don't need that in heaven. It's really kind of cool. So anyway, I'm standing there on the pasture, just looking, just enjoying, and just going like, whew, oh, I'm back home again. This feels good. I'm not down in there neck crazy. ICU room. It's no pain now. I just feel in peace and love. And across the field comes running 2 horses and 3 little dogs. And as they approached, I recognized them. And they recognized me. They came up to me. My wife and I had 2 horses. One was named Shakush, and the other one was named Nugget. She used to call him Shock. They recognized me. Then there was 3 little dogs. 2 of the dogs I knew. One was Fudge 1, Fudge 2, and the other dog I didn't know who it was. Fudge 1 and 2, we name all of our dogs Fudge because we don't want to get the name wrong. And we have Fudge 3 that lives with us now. So we never mix up their names. But they were there, they were happy, and then I learned something else. Not only are your pets in heaven, but Jesus has made a way that you can communicate with them. You can actually have a conversation. It's not like, hi, I'm Mr. Ed, the talking horse. That's not what it is, but you actually can communicate with them. So if you ever wondered what your pets are thinking, when you get to heaven, you'll be able to know. And we just communicated back and forth, and the horses were happy, and the dogs were happy, and they were just so elated that they were in heaven. In fact, I wrote a song about it. It's called Our Beloved Furry Friends, and it's about our pets in heaven. I was just enjoying conversing with them. And the 3rd dog, by the way, I learned out that little dog's name was Annie. And when I came back to life, and I talked to my wife later on when I was explaining to her about everything in heaven, she said, what'd that dog look like? And I told her, and she said, just a minute. And she went and dug back to herself. She had a little dog that she had before I even knew Carol. I never knew her that she had this dog. And she had to have that dog put down as well. And that little dog's name was Annie. And that was the dog. And she cried, knowing that Annie was there. Well, I'm talking to them, and bam, I'm back in the ICU again. Them doctors did it again. I get to heaven for a little bit, and they keep jerking me back. I'm starting to feel like a yo-yo here. And of course, chaos was going on down there. They got my heart starting, and then it was just a short while. Bam, I died the 3rd time. And I was back in heaven again. This time, I was going to meet Jesus. I didn't know it. I didn't know how long I was going to be in heaven this time, or if I was going to be there all the time now. But I was standing at the inner courtyard. And I saw Jesus in the distance. And I started walking over to him. As I approached him, I found out my dad was wrong. I didn't start out with right knee on the ground, my left knee on the ground. I just fell full prostrate, face down, in the ground, crying like a little baby. From not sadness, just tears of joy and humility. I was laying in front of my Lord and Savior, the creator of the entire universe. And I was in front of him. I am in heaven. I'm in heaven. He stood and he walked over to me. And he reached out with his hand and he says, take my hand and stand. We must talk about. Let's walk and talk. And Jesus held me up. He wiped my tears. And the first thing out of my mouth was, Can I go back? I want to comfort Carol. I need to comfort Carol. I was thinking about her because I saw what it was doing to her and devastating her. Well, Jesus never answered that question. I thought, just went right over his head. He said, let's walk and talk. And we walked through heaven. And while we were walking, he was teaching, talking to me. He was sharing heaven with me. We talked about the Bible. I didn't know then why he was teaching me all this and telling me all these things, but I know now it was because he wanted me to be able to share that and answer people's questions about heaven and the Bible, questions that they've always had that they don't seem to get answers to, that they want to know, what is heaven like? Is it real? Is Jesus real? Is he really loving? All those things we shared, he taught me. He taught me about what happens to babies if they die at 2 days old. What happens if a baby is aborted, or if there's a miscarriage, or they die at birth? Do they go to heaven? What happens to them? Who's caring for them? Will you get to see them again? Will they know you? All of these things he covered. He talked about when time began, why he wrote the Bible, how he wrote the Bible, how to understand and interpret it, and use it to show people that he has. There's nothing new under the sun. It's all in that book. It's the living word of God, not the stagnant one. It's the living word of God. And every time you read it, if you read it with the Holy Spirit's guidance and love, you're going to see something new in there, and you're going to understand something new. So we continued through heaven, and we continued walking, and we walked and we talked for 43 hours and 28 minutes. It's a long time. As I told my wife, today is the 21st. A year ago, I was still in heaven, walking and talking with Jesus. This is my anniversary of walking with Jesus. I met him face to face, not in prayer, not in a dream, face to face. He is real. He is loving, and heaven is real. So we continued walking, and we walked, and he showed me where Carol and I are going to live. And he showed me the house, and there's a pasture in the back of it. And he explained how everybody's mansion, if people call them mansions, but they're an abode, that's where they will live. It's a house. Everyone is different. And it goes according to what they would visualize and what they would like. Because in heaven, we're not robots. We're still individuals. And he takes care of us each in their own way. And I can explain the houses later, but in ours, the pasture, my 2 horses and 3 dogs playing. Now, the dogs are over there playing. They were too busy. They're just having a good time running and jumping through the fields and everything and being happy. And the 2 horses came trotting up. But they didn't come trotting up to me. They went up to Jesus. The coolest thing that ever happened in my life that I could talk about with those horses was I was in heaven with Jesus, where I'm going to live for all eternity. And he was petting my horse's nose. He loves the animals just as much as he does us. He loves everything and everybody. And to see him smile and pet their nose and giggle. See, people have a picture of Jesus so stoic, stern, and he can be. But that's not him. He's loving. He smiles. He laughs. He's got a sense of humor. He's got the cutest little giggle you'll ever hear. And it's just pure joy that he's enjoying with you. Just like when we enjoy things and we laugh and we have fun. Little kids, you know how they just laugh and giggle? Jesus can do that. He's real. He made us just like him in his image. Why we got this in our mind that he's anything other than that? Because we can do it and Jesus can't? What? No. He actually has that. He has, I hate to say that personality, but his personality is Jesus and God, the Father and the Holy Spirit. It's all his personality that makes him up. Just like the Trinity is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. His personality is there as well. And it comes out. when we get to interact with him. It's just magnificent. Well, a week left, and we continued walking through heaven, and he continued teaching me so that I could, now I know, be able to answer questions later. And he taught me about everything. He taught me about what we're going to eat in heaven. Where's our food going to come from? What type of food are we going to do? What are we going to do? Are there going to be sports? Are there going to be activities? Are we just going to sit there and sing all day? Kumbaya? No, we're going to live. He said, you will live in heaven with me for all eternity. He didn't say you will exist. You're not stagnant. A picture exists. You will live. And it is beautiful and wonderful. You can't believe the joy that you're going to experience. You just can't believe it. So we continued on and continued on. And for that 43 hours, 28 minutes, he just shared so much with me. I could talk for hours, and I have. I've talked to some people for 8 hours just answering questions. And when I do, I get just as much out of it as they are. If you were to say, I'm going to tell you everything I know, or you and say, you're going to tell me everything you know, where do you start? Could you sit down and tell me everything you know? No. But people will interact and ask questions about things, and things will come up, and that's why he gave me that knowledge. I have that knowledge. I tell people, I say, well, I went to heaven for 15 minutes, and I got my bachelor's degree in heaven. And then I went to heaven for 17 minutes, and I got my master's degree in heaven and theology. And then I went to heaven for 43 hours and 28 minutes, and I got my double doctorate in Jesus, heaven, the Bible, reality, creation, and people. So to share all that take me a lifetime, but that's what he wants me to do now. He wants me to share all that he gave me with people for what they're interested in and what they want questions answered about, what pertains to them that will enable them to understand his love, his interaction with him, why he does things. And that's what he taught me.
A few ways you've been able to share that is you've written a book as well as you have music.
I did. I wrote a book. It was called 44 Hours in Heaven. And it's self-published. We published it. It gives a complete accounting of what happened to me, how I got sick, the emergency room. It gives an in detail depth of what happened in the ICU, of my dying. And the unique thing about my book, it wasn't an NDE. It was an actual death. I died. Jesus gave me a new life. The other thing that's unique is, and I talk about heaven and what Carol went through and everything else, as much as you can put in a book. I mean, I'm in the process of writing another one just about heaven and all the different questions. But in the book itself, we put copies of medical records because we want people to understand, just as the doctors did, that this wasn't anything that they did. There's no way in the world that I could be here talking to you, sitting here, standing, walking, doing anything that I do today, except for one and only one reason. God performed a miracle and sent me back. And he told me in our final conversation that he would send me back as if I had never died. And he will do it in a fashion that nobody can question that this was an absolute miracle. Not the doctors, not anybody. So that when they realize that, they will know that what I'm telling them is from him.
And this is really the thing that's so amazing is the fact that the degree to which your body had died, your brain was gone, your organs were gone. I mean, there was such disarray within your body. Any normal person would say, yes, this person's completely and entirely dead, and that's the end of that.
It
But
was.
somehow, look at you right now. What happened?
Jesus. No, I agree. When I came back, the doctors were absolutely astounded because there's no scientific, medical, or any other explanation for me being here and them having just not buried me than the miracle from God. That's all there is to it. They even admitted, now, doctors, and scientists can be stubborn. They even admitted that this is an absolute miracle. They've never seen it.
And what happened when you're in the hospital? Because there must have been this period of this transition where you're completely dead, flatline, gone for minutes on end, hour,
Days,
and
days.
for days, right? And then how could it be that for after days of being entirely dead and flatlined, your heart starts pumping again?
It's a good, very good question. As I told you, it's a miracle. So on the 19th, I died. And then, of course, they had me on machines and would keep me there. The doctors were just literally waiting to convince my wife to let them pull all life support equipment off of me so that she could bury me because there was no hope. I met one of the ICU nurses later on in a church, ironically, that I was talking at. And I walked up to her and I says, I know you. She looked at me. I says, your name is Grace. I said, you were the ICU. You were in the ICU when I died, and you were crawling underneath the table. And she looked at me and said, like, how do you know that? I said, because I saw you. But we shared afterwards, and she kept the journal that every day that she wrote from the ICU. And you imagine she sees a lot. And she put in a journal, and she says, this wasn't to be mean, but we referred to you as the potato in room number 7. And I said, well, I'm a living potato now. She says, because there was no hope. Absolutely nothing. Now, I laid there. What the doctors didn't know, what Carol didn't know, was that, yes, I died, but I went to heaven. And I was with Jesus. And they didn't realize that Jesus was in control. And he can overcome anything that you think can't happen. He can do anything that he wants. On the 23rd of May, Jesus sent me back. The final conversation that I had was in the inner courtyard, and he started the conversation. And he said, I heard you when you first got here and asked me if you could go back and care for Carol. He said, however, your body, your brain has been destroyed and has suffered much. He says, if I were to send you back, you couldn't comfort anybody. You couldn't comfort Carol. You will be self-contained within your own body. You'll be able to do nothing. Therefore, I will not send you back. I'm going, okay, well, I guess I'm going to be here, which isn't a bad thing, But he very quickly said, however, I could and would send you back with some caveats. He said, I could send you back as if you never died. I would give you a new brain, a new heart, new lungs, everything, new organs. It would be as if you never died. And I would do so in a fashion that nobody can deny that I did it. He said, I will command you to share everything that you experienced here, everything I taught you, everything about me, heaven, the Bible. And you will share that with anybody, anytime, any place that I put in front of you. And you will answer their questions about heaven, him, the Bible, the miracle that he did, how I died, why I died, with anybody, anywhere, anytime that I put in front of you. He says, you will do so in truth and spirit, and you will worship me in truth and spirit. He said also, if I send you back, you will feel every ounce of pain and discomfort that your body will go through from the moment I send you back until the time you leave the hospital. He says, you will experience that as if you had no anesthesia. They'll still give you anesthesia. They'll still do that. But it will have no effect. You will feel that. And then he said, if Jesus ever says if to you, Be prepared. He said, if you survive that pain, then I will allow the doctors to restore you and help you recover till you will be complete. But they will know that it's a miracle, and then you will share. You will do so with a true heart for no selfish reasons. And I will know because I will search your heart. Well, Jesus can search whatever he wants. He can do whatever he thinks. I mean, he can do anything. He says, now you have a choice. You can stay here in heaven and you'll be fine. But you will not have any memory of Carol, anything down here. You won't be able to intercede. You won't be able to interact. You won't know what happened to Carol, and you can't do anything to help her until she comes to heaven too. He said, or I could send you back with the caveats I just discussed with you. What is your choice? It didn't take me long. I told him I'd be honored and blessed to go back and help him spread his word. I had no choice. He said I did, but I had no choice. Not if I had Jesus, truly loved him. How could I say no to Jesus? My Lord, the creator of all the universe, is asking me to do something for him? I couldn't say no. I know now why he said it will be no selfish, it will be done out of love, because love is not self-seeking. And I wasn't doing it for me. I truly was wanting to do it for him. He was true to his word. He sent me back. He was right about one thing. I felt all the pain. And there were times I wasn't sure I was going to make it through the pain. But I did, and he did give me a new brain. On the 23rd of May, the doc got the shock of his life. I was laying there. They just about had Carol convinced to end the life support and bury me because there was no hope. I was dead. I wasn't just dead, I was brain dead. So they thought. Of course, you can't blame the doctors because they're reacting according to what they know, and that's medical science and normal situations. The 23rd of May, Carol had her fingers in my hand like this, in this hand. And she was kind of holding my hand the best she could. And I was just laying there, dead. And I squeezed her finger to let her know I was in there. She squeezed mine back. I squeezed her. She squeezed it again, but I just couldn't get that other squeeze in. It was just to let her know that I was there. I couldn't talk. I couldn't do anything. But they were going to bury me. So I got to get them know, hey, I'm in here now, okay? And she told the doctor, she says, he just squeezed my fingers. And the doctor says, no, he didn't. He said, that's just a twitch. She says, no, he squeezed my fingers. He says, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to lower all the sedation and medications and everything down. And I'll come back in a couple of hours and I'll show you that there is nothing in there. Talking to the doctor later, he told me that he saw his chance to convince her that there was no hope and that he could disconnect me and get along. She could go on along and bury me. Because basically I was just taking up room in the ICU. He lowered everything. He came back a couple hours later. And Carol, of course, she's excited. Hopeful, I guess would be a better word for it. And the doctor came up next to me. And he sat on a little stool and he pulled up right next to where my bed was in the ICU. He sat next to me and he got right next to my ear. His name was Dr. Gouda. And he got next to my ears and he goes, my name is Dr. Gouda, like the cheese. He said, if you can hear me, raise your arms. Well, if you think about it, the dumbest thing I ever heard a doctor do was tell a person who's dead, in his mind, he's dead and paralyzed from drugs, to raise your arms. He was pretty sure that wasn't going to happen because he knew this is his chance to convince her to end this and get on and bury me. To his surprise, I raised both my arms up like this. And he jumped back, he scooted his chair back, and he looked at me and he comes back forward and he goes, what the? And he gets up next to me, my ear again, he says, if you can hear me, wiggle your feet. I wiggled my feet. He looked at my wife and he looked back at me and said, look at me. And I looked at him. And the look on his face must have been priceless. He said, blink your eyes. I blinked my eyes. Blink it faster. I blinked it faster. He goes, I do not know what's going on here. I don't understand this, but I got to do another MRI. Of course, Carol's excited now. They do a bunch of check, heart's beating, and of course, it's on the machines and everything still. He goes in there, he told Carol, listen, we're going to do an MRI. She says, I'll wait. He says, no, it's going to be later today that we get to the MRI. He says, but tomorrow we'll have the results and everything. So, of course, Carol, she went home that night all optimistic, and she was now worried, though, because she, being in the medical field, knew that there's a possibility I could still be, I might have a brain, I might not be able to breathe, they might still need on that, and, it still could be a long, long hassle to go along, because she hadn't seen the other MRI yet that showed nothing, because they spared her that. Well, the next day, Carol came in. She was there every day for 31 days that I was in the hospital. She came in and she went up to the nurse and said, well, did they get the results back from the MRI? The nurse said, yes. She said, well, what'd they say? What'd they say? And she says, I can't. That's up to the doctor to disclose. I can't. The doctor came in. He says, okay, I don't understand this. There's nothing wrong with this man. He's got a perfect brain. Showed her the MRI. Now there is a brand new perfect brain. Showed him the other one. Nothing. Here, perfect brain. All of his organs are working. Everything is, I don't understand what's going on. But he's going to be fine. There's nothing wrong. And of course, the doctors later, they even had to admit it was a miracle. He says, there's no way this is from anything that we did. There's just no explanation. So Jesus is why I'm here. He performed that miracle. He said, I will send you back as if you had never died. And he did. And today, I am here, alive. I play golf again. I mostly go around talking to people about what Jesus did for me. I tell people I died at 75 and I had a good life. This life that I have now, I'll be 1 year old the 23rd of May, or I'll be 76 years old on the 24th of May, whichever way you want to look at it. But this life is not mine. This is Jesus' life. I have only one thing in life to do, and that's to continue to love him and everybody else, and to share his love and the knowledge that he gave me about heaven, about the Bible, about Jesus, and answer any questions that anybody has. And that's all I will do. I wrote the book. I'm writing another one that's going to put all the stuff in it about what heaven is and questions and answers. I wrote, created, and published an album with 8 songs. It's called Songs from Heaven. So my whole life is to share Jesus.
Wow. So that's the most amazing story ever. And I like how you say this isn't an NDE because it wasn't really near death. It was certainly an experience, but it was an actual death. It was an ADE, an actual death experience where you came back with this whole renovated, remodeled body that you have today, which is crazy. Thanks for sharing that in such detail. I know the folks watching this are going to love it. And you know what? To get to even know you more, I got this segment that I have where I ask you a few questions. All right, I prepared these ahead of time. Questions I really think can, tap into Robert so we can get to know you more. And it's called Heart's First Whisper. The idea is I ask you the question, and your heart replies without even any thought involved. All right, the first one is, what did it feel like the moment you saw Jesus face to face?
Well, I was glad he picked me up off the ground because it was just the most amazing experience of love I've ever shared with anybody. When Jesus looks at you with his eyes are totally focused on you. You've talked to people and they'll look this way or they'll look that way. They never focus right on you. You're looking at him and you're talking to him, and you know and feel that you are the most important person or a conversation he's having ever, because he gives you total concentration, total fixation on you, and his love just permeates out of his eyes. He has a sparkle, and the closer you get to him, his love becomes even more strong. Now, when Jesus holds your hand or he touches you, it's the strangest thing that happens, because it's like your hand kind of glows, or he brushes your cheek, it glows. And when he takes it away, that just kind of stays for a little and just kind of fades away a little bit. But that's how powerful his love is. It's actually him. But that love just surrounds you. It just engulfs you. And you know that when he says something, it's absolute truth. And it's absolute out of love. No matter what he does, no matter what he says, no matter how he acknowledges your response to him, it is coming from love. He truly is pure love. You know, people say we've looked evil in the face. Well, looking Jesus in the face is looking at pure love.
Well, it's amazing when you feel that on the other side. And then the question, how do you bring it back with you? Which takes us into question two, which is what changed in you the moment you came back? Maybe the moment you woke up in ICU.
Everything. The first thing that came out of my mouth, and my wife will tell you this, is I died. I said, I went to heaven. I met Jesus. And all I could do was just talk about Jesus in heaven. That's all that's all I wanted to talk about. My life since has totally changed. I'm not disconnected from God at all. Not like I was before. I'm caught up in Jesus. I ain't caught up in the world. I'm caught up in Jesus, and he through me are going out into the world, but not to get caught up in it, but to share it, to be in it, so that they can see his love. I want them, when they look at me and see me, that they know that's love. That's Jesus' love. I've had a lot of people that knew me before and said quite candidly, you are not the same person. And it's true. I used to be competitive, and I would have to beat you at anything we played. And now it just doesn't matter. I finally figured out what it's like to be joyful and happy and to love not only yourself, but Jesus and others. That's how my life is now. It's just amazing.
That leads right into the next question, which is just about that. Like, what does love mean to you now after this experience?
Absolutely everything. Without love, 1 Corinthians, it says, without love, we're just a noisy gong. And I was a noisy gong before. Maybe I wouldn't gong all the time. Maybe it would tone down a little bit. But I'd bang that bell again, and sure enough, that'd overcome everything. The love that he has, the love that I experienced when I was there, and the love that I was able to come back with because he's in my heart, and I know and I feel that love, and I let that love control me. Before, I wanted to control everything. I had to be in charge. A lot of people do that in the world. Yeah, I love Jesus, but I'm going to do this one on my own. No, do everything out of love, and he will open up doors for you and joyous things and happiness that you can never dream possible. And that's what I got to convey to everybody else. So the love is, what does love mean now? That's my life. Where before, I was my life.
Well, it's fascinating because you had this experience, so you have the knowing of this now. But, number four, what would you say to someone who's afraid of death that hasn't had this experience and doesn't have this knowing? How do you share that experience with them to help them through these difficult times?
Well, the first thing I'd have to share to them is make sure that they understand who Jesus is and that they have accepted him and they are a born again believer. That would be the first thing. And then that having done that, that's the only way that they could understand and comprehend what I'm telling them. And that is that there is no fear in love. There is none. I don't fear death. I don't fear injury. I don't worry about anything anymore. I have none of those traits that I used to have. I truly don't. Because his love eliminates it. When you live in his love and do everything out of love, as he says, if we could take chapter 13 out of 1 Corinthians, verses 4 through 7, and put it in our mind, it's in mine, but put that in our minds and use it as a checklist. Just like a pilot, before he takes a plane off, he has a checklist. If he goes through it, it's going to be successful. If he doesn't, things can go bad. That's what we do in life. If everything we do, everything we say, every reaction that we do, every reason we do them, if we truly search and think about, do these abide and apply about what love is, and are they being done out of love? If they don't reach that, then don't do it. Perfect example. Somebody insults you. I'm going to insult you right back. I have that right. I have that right. No, you really don't. Because if you're a Christian and they're insulting you or they're doing something, guess what? They're doing that to Jesus. And Jesus wouldn't take into account that wrong suffered, would he? So suddenly I don't have to retaliate. I really wish they wouldn't do that. But I'm sorry that you feel that way. But I love you anyway.
Well, that's a great lesson. And I know you've got many lessons you came back with. But I tell you, number 5 here leads right into, this question, which is, what's the most important thing Jesus taught you during those 44 hours? Is there one you can point to?
If we truly do everything out of love, everything will be perfect. Also, you got to understand, we're to do God's work. But get it straight. What is God's work? Is to believe in the one he sent and to love him. We are to love others as we love Jesus and Jesus loves us. It's a new commandment. In the New Testament, he said that. He's telling the disciples, I give you a new commandment, that you love one another and you love him. It's not in the first 10. Of course, our salvation wasn't in the first 10 commandments either. But in the New Testament, he says that. And it's not optional. He said, you must do it out of love. That's his work. That's the commandment that he wants you to obey. The 11th commandment, that you shall love God and love others, fulfills all of the first 10. And if you take the first 10 commandments and you compare them to what love is, you will see that you can't love him and love others under that commandment that he gave us in the New Testament. If you love him like he said, you will not do any of the other 10 commandments. He summed it up very simply. These are in this. Do this. Love. And that's it. Because it's not self-serving. It's kind. It's gentle. You're not going to go out and murder somebody. And he also said, remember, that you love him. So you're not putting any God first either, are you? Only one. Everything in there is that.
So with all that direction on love, and that is amazing. And I think when you're on the other side in heaven, you can feel that everywhere. On this side, there's a lot of, crazy stuff that's happening in the world, which brings us to number 6, which is, how has your view of the pain, suffering, or illness in this world changed since your return?
I understand it. And by that, I mean this. Jesus shared with me that if you're going to try and find out what is from God and what is from the world and Satan, it's a very simple challenge. If it's good, it's from God. If it's bad, it's from the world or Satan. God does not cause ill will on people. He doesn't set you up and make you fall and break your arm. He doesn't make you get ill. He doesn't say you're going to have a lot of pain, you're going to suffer. That's not God. That's of the world that we live in. See, we all have imputed sin from Adam and Eve. And we're born with that sinful nature. And that sinful nature, when the sin entered the world, it wasn't just man that is suffering that curse. It's all the world, all living things, everything else. That's when death entered the world, death and decay. As a result, our bodies then can get death and decay, which is caused by outside influences in the world, by diseases, bacteria, and stuff that those are all bad things. But that's not from God. But he allows us to go through them because when that happens to us, he uses that, Romans 8:28, all things work together for the good for those who love God and are called according to his purpose. He uses those bad things to help mold us and conform us to be more Christ-like. So all he's there. Now he will be with you to help you suffer those things, but that's just some things that we just have to suffer and go through here. Sometimes we bring them on ourselves. Sometimes they're as a result of somebody else. Consequently, everybody's actions have consequences and reactions. So if someone evil or bad or misguided or not applying love does something or influences something that you're injured or ill as a result of it because of the bad and stuff in the world, it's not from God. Don't blame God. Thank God that it's only temporary, because when you get to heaven, you won't have any of that in the new world. But it's not from God. So first thing you do is you recognize that it's not because God's punishing you or that it's happening because of God. He'll comfort you, try to get you through it. It's just life has those things. Some people get sick, some people die.
Definitely. Those are the worldly experiences that we do have for sure. And that really takes us into our final question here, which is number 7, which is, what do you believe we're really here to do while we're still alive in this physical form?
Our purpose has changed since Adam and Eve sinned and sin entered the world. He originally made us in his image, for him. That's what he did. But when we sinned, we're still going to continue. But now our main purpose should be that we should be trying to do it to come to him. If there's one goal in mind, one work that you can do in this life that would be pleasing God, would be to accept him, love him, and come to him, so that he will be able to allow you into heaven and spend all of eternity with you. Remember, when you're born into sin. You're born, but you're dead. You're dead in your sin. A little baby's dead in his sins. Everybody, you're in death because you're separated from God. To be separated from God is death. So the whole process of our life is to get to the point where we can truly be born, and then we will live with him. So in essence, we're all going through birth. In a way, you have a physical birth. Well, you have a conception and you have an embryo, and the embryo grows. It's all part of life. And part of our life here is to get out of death and truly be born. That's why he says you're born again. To be separated from God is death. In the Bible, people say that suicide, if you commit suicide, you can't go to heaven. Well, it's true, but not true, because you got to understand what suicide he's talking about. Suicide is taking your own life. It's choosing death over life. So now, the only sin that will keep you out of heaven is non-belief, rejection of Christ, rejection of him. So when you're confronted with you're not going to accept him, you reject him, that's choosing death over life. You rejected him. And if you kill yourself before you accepted him, you did the same thing. You took your life before you could accept him. So you choose that over God. You chose your life over him. So if a Christian, for an example, truly a born again, he gets caught up in the world and he sins and he gets in weird things with drugs or whatever, good people do bad things. Good Christians, believers still can do bad things. We live in this world still. We're influenced. When we accept Christ, he didn't take our free will away. We're still us. But we should exercise it through his love and do it out of love. But let's say you didn't and you were a Christian and you committed suicide by overdose or gun or whatever the case may be. Does that mean you're not going to heaven? No, you're going to go to heaven because you already had him in your heart and nobody will snatch you from their hands. But suicide that they're talking about is, that Jesus says, is basically that sin, that your rejection of him. You're choosing to end your life before you could choose him. That's a rejection of him. So that's the only thing. But there's only one sin that will keep you out of heaven: rejecting. And then your life is over, because you're choosing death over being born again, because that separation from God is death.
Well, thank you, Robert. Those questions I put together ahead of time, I do create because I figure we were able to dig a little deeper into the topic, and I feel we did. Great responses. Thank you. And I know you have so much more to share. And so before we wrap up here, I want to talk a bit about a couple of things. First of all, your website at 44hoursinheavenministries.org. We can see that here on the screen. Lots of things offered in here. It's amazing. You've got your book in there that you mentioned. Folks can come into here and order it physically, or, like I pulled down the Audible version of it. And the other items you have here, I really like that coffee cup, by the way. Thanks for that.
Oh,
I ordered that.
oh, you did get it. Great.
Well, I haven't gotten it yet. I just ordered it, but I'm really looking forward to it. So I appreciate that for sure. And the website is great. I know you spent a lot of time putting that together. It looks nice and clean. And I really like the music that you've created also. I definitely wanted to talk about that before we go. There's a couple of songs in there, Picking Apples. You want to explain a little bit about what motivated the creation of this and kind of how you did it?
Sure, Jesus. That's the answer for everything. Well, even the book, 44 Hours in Heaven, it was created because of Jesus. He wanted me to share it. Now, in sharing it isn't just talking with people face to face. I can reach a lot of people through the book. I can reach a lot of people through the music. But all the proceeds, and I want to point this out, we do sell those, all right? But all the proceeds go into the ministry. We're 501c3, and I don't keep any of the money. It's not for me. It's because we're starting a Jesus Makes Sense crusade to go around the country. What I did was, I've taken the words and conversations that Jesus and I had and put them to music. If you read my book, you'll see that a lot of these songs that I've done on our first album, which is Songs from Heaven, are words right out of the book, right out of the conversation I had with Jesus, right out about heaven. And everything in here is to promote and push the love that Jesus had. Every song has love. The particular one, the Picking Apples, I have a graphic artist who does some of our artwork and stuff for our websites and our t-shirts and so on. Her name is Sherry. She's just fantastic, most loving Christian lady you'll ever want to know. She has just got a heart of gold. You call her up, I don't care what she's going through. She is a smile in her voice, and she truly, truly epitomizes Jesus' love through every conversation. Well, her husband, she was telling me about her husband had a conversation with his dad. The last thing his dad said to him in the hospital, he was in the hospital and he was dying, was that he says, well, he said, I'll see you on this other side, son, where I'll be picking apples. I listened to that and I sat down and I wrote this song in 5 minutes on what Jesus would do. I put the music together and put it all together, recorded it, and I mean, literally just, it was that fast. It talks about Jesus picking apples all day long with his dad. But the purpose of the song, and the way if you look at it and you listen to the words and the music, anybody could apply. It's memories of what you've done. It's the little things that we remember. You could say, well, I used to go fishing with my dad, or we used to listen to the music, or we would cook together, whatever little things you used to do. Walks in the park. You can substitute anything in there. And that was the whole purpose of the song, is to show people that Jesus is there to help comfort those people as well. And to let you know that Jesus is alive and they're there and they'll be there when you get there.
Yeah, I like that song. It's amazing. I played it the first time and I thought, well, this is really well done. And then there's another one there. If you could share a little on that, If Tomorrow My Life Would End. Another great song.
Well, that one there was the first song in the album, and it was if tomorrow my life would end, what would happen? And of course, we never know when we're going to die. I had no idea I was going to die on the 19th of May. I had no idea I was going to come back on the 23rd either. But we never know. And this kind of depicts what would happen. And of course, the song talks about it. If tomorrow would end, what are we going to do? what happens? Why should we? And once again, it depicts Jesus' love. And it's kind of an upbeat tone. I've done one in like a country version too, but this one here just it talks about praising Jesus all day long, and that's what we need to do. We really do. And they're just songs that he gave me the words to put down because Jesus is happy. Well, remember I told you Jesus is he smiles, he laughs, he's got a cute little giggle. Well, I can promise you, he's giggling right now because I always used to say I couldn't carry a tune in a bucket, and I had no idea of music. Of course, I didn't have any idea about writing a book either, but Jesus says, yeah, that's right. But watch what I can do with you now because you are truly listening to me. And those are just songs that he wants people to hear. They're his words. They're Jesus's words. When I say the albums is a song from heaven, they're from him. They're from his words. They're from the real, exact, true life experience or death experience that I experienced when I walked with Jesus in heaven. I could not have asked for a better mentor or a better influence to get those words. They're just love.
Well, we got a special treat because as we wrap up right now, we'll play one of the songs that you have that's called My Final Conversation. So if you guys hang around right to the very end, that is the treat that we'll share with you guys today. So Robert, your story is nothing short of extraordinary and deeply humbling. From 3 clinical deaths to being taught directly by Jesus, you've returned with a message of love, truth, and urgency. And for those listening, I want you to hear this. Robert didn't come back just to tell a story. He came back with a calling to remind us of what matters most: faith, love, and the reality of eternity. So Robert, thank you for responding to that call, and thank you for everything that you're doing to share this experience with us today. I really appreciate you and your time you spent with us. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. It's my blessing. And if I would add, if they go to that website, 44hoursinheaven.org, there's a place in there that says comments or questions. If you will submit a comment or a question about anything, I will answer it. Oh, about heaven, Jesus, the Bible, but I'm not going to give you the lottery numbers.
Exactly. Well, thank you for that. And thank you for joining us on this profound journey. If you found this conversation enlightening, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you're enjoying this kind of content, consider subscribing and sharing it with someone you care about. And until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and go beyond the illusion to discover your true self. So take care, everyone. And I hope you enjoy My Final Conversation. Bye for now.
Jesus and I entered the inner courtyard together and sat on a bench under the canopy of some towering trees on the edge of the river of life. We were about to discuss whether I would be staying in heaven or returning to life on earth. As I sat there with my Lord and Savior, I felt more loved and welcomed than I ever felt in my life. I felt like I belonged and I was home. Jesus started the conversation. He said, "Before our walk, you told me that you were concerned about Carol because how your death was affecting her. You asked me if you could go back and comfort and take care of her. I heard you, but did not answer then because I wanted to share much with you. I needed to know that if you were allowed to go back, it would be for the right reasons. The love in your heart would make the decision and would have to be made without any ulterior motives and without any selfish reasons whatsoever. I know your desire to return is from the love you have for Carol, and it was truly to comfort and continue to love her. However, this is the 3rd time you died and came here as a result of your death. Your body has suffered much damage. If I were to just send you back and allow the doctors to continue medical treatment and life support, the death of your brain cells and deterioration of your organs and body parts would make it impossible. for you to have a normal life, and you would be confined within yourself and unable to comfort Carol or anybody. Therefore, you would be staying in heaven. Jesus continued, I could and would send you back with some conditions. Jesus said, let me explain. If you choose to have me send you back, I will give you a renewed brain, organs, and body parts that will allow you to function as if you never died. It will enable you to comfort and care for Carol. You will have a complete memory of your life, including what I shared and taught you while in heaven. And I would command you to share how and why you are allowed to live, as well as what I shared and taught you while in heaven with me. You will do so with anybody, anytime, anywhere that I put in your path. You will also entertain any questions about what I shared and taught you from anybody, anytime, anywhere who asks. Jesus continued, if you go back, you also will have to endure all of the pain or discomfort from the moment you enter your body until you fully recover. This will include all procedures and surgeries the doctors perform on you. Also, you will feel all of this as if you had no anesthesia. Jesus said, if you survive this pain, then I will allow the doctors to resuscitate you. Jesus then said, you now have to make a choice. The choice to stay in heaven with me, and as I shared, you will not be able to look down on Carol, and you will not know anything that she is going through. You will not be able to comfort her. You will not have any memory of her until she arrives in heaven, and I will comfort her in your place. Or you will go back with all of the conditions I disclosed to you and fulfill the commands I gave to you. Jesus told me that whatever I chose, I would be all right, but it would have to be a pure, unselfish decision on my part. I looked at Jesus and told him my choice. I told him I wanted to go back and that it would be a blessing to share what he shared with me and taught me. I know Jesus searched my heart, and I must have had the right motives in my heart, because I was sitting in heaven with Jesus, and the next moment, I was back in the ICU. My obituary would have read Robert died the 19th day of May 2024 and entered heaven at 75. But Jesus blessed me with a miracle on the 23rd day of May 2024 when he sent me back and gave me life again. I am no longer retired. I have a new job that isn't work at all. It is serving Jesus and sharing his love and all he taught me with anybody, anywhere, anytime that he puts in front of me.